This is Maharajas of Scale, a podcast where we go behind the scenes and talk to founders who are demolishing the myths around building and scaling a big business in India. These are the stories that have shattered the assumptions around Indian consumers and are changing the game completely. I am Krishna Jonakadla, serial entrepreneur, co-founder of Flit, the fashion locator in town, and startup mentor, bringing you these stories. Hey everyone, this is your host Krishna from Maharajas of Scale. Today I have the privilege and pleasure of hosting someone who's done a phenomenal job of growing a startup, and it is Sunil Patro of SignEasy. And when you hear the story, you'll understand what a fabulous job he has done, growing it in the weeds in a silent manner, focused on doing the right thing, building the product, getting customers. SignEasy is a platform where you can send documents between each other for electronic signatures. And the last time you had frustration where somebody said, okay, sign this, scan this, and send it to me either as a PDF or fax it to me. That's where, and if you had a moment of frustration right there, that's the problem that SignEasy solves. Sunil, welcome to the show.
Hey Krishna, thanks for having me here. I'm excited to be, having this conversation today.
Wonderful. Where in the world are you today?
I am in the North Americas. Let's say that.
Okay. Any particular location in the North Americas?
Right now I'm based in Mexico City, but I usually work out of Dallas.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think this is the first time we have someone who's going to be joining in from Mexico City. That's awesome. I've visited that city. I think it belies expectations. It's huge. Even most Indians who've seen cities like Delhi and Mumbai who visit Mexico City will acknowledge that it's gargantuan in size. And even when you fly in aerially, the city just seems never ending. Right?
Yeah, for sure. It's like Bombay or New York. No, it just seems infinite.
It seems infinite.
And
yes.
It has the feeling of the hustle and bustle and the diversity of the cities.
Right. Awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're working on right now.
Okay. So a little bit about myself. I am originally from Odisha, which is the eastern state in India. Grew up in Bhubaneswar for most of the times. Then did my undergraduate from IIT Kharagpur. Then went to do my master's at Purdue University in the US. Right after that, worked for some of the biggest software companies in the world. And then after, I guess, close to 7 years or 6 years, quickly realized that I need to work in a startup, just be closer to customers and closer to innovation. And I worked for a company called TalkBox in the video conferencing space at the time. After that, I worked for another one or two startups, and then decided to build on my own idea, and that is what I'm working on since for the last 10 years. It's SignEasy.
Interesting. So talk to us about those initial days. You said you were working for these technology companies. Was it in India or was it in the US?
No, this is most of my professional experience has been in the US. This is for companies like Microsoft, Juniper Networks, TalkBox, and I did work for an Indian company called ClearTrip, and as all of you know, ClearTrip. But that was once I moved back to India after my professional stint in the US.
Interesting. And this was post the dot-com bust time, I'm thinking.
Yeah. Like this was around in 2002, 2003.
Right.
When right after my master's in the US, joined Microsoft as a software developer in their Windows Messenger / Office communicator which is today now it's kind of evolved into MS Teams, Microsoft Teams, and all, right. So that was one of the first enterprise-focused messaging and communication products.
Was this in Palo Alto or Silicon Valley
It
or
was in
Seattle? Seattle.
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 Yeah.
Okay. So when did the startup bug actually hit you? You mentioned at some point in time you wanted to work for
Yeah.
startups. And was it a
So
desire to work for startups or be an entrepreneur or both?
no, yeah, I think it was mostly around a desire to work on an early stage product which is innovative, right? So after 5 years of working in large software companies, and I had moved down to the Bay Area at that time around 2006 and 7, and being surrounded by so many other startups and looking at the splash they are making in terms of new ideas, disrupting existing markets or status quo pain points, you kind of start you know you know realizing, hey, if you want to make a bigger impact but in a smaller team, and also work on a lot more new age problems, which can be more challenging, the solution doesn't exist, maybe you would have just more fun, right? And I felt that's also another way to get closer to the customers, because in big companies you work on projects and ideas, but sometimes you don't hear the feedback from the customer directly. You have to rely on other functions to tell you that feedback. But in a startup, being a 20 member or maybe 30, 50 member team, everybody knows pretty much everything that's going on, right? On marketing side, customer side, product side, business side. So that was mainly one of my desire or curiosity, right? I would like to be a lot more involved in the customer success, and then also in the business success, the success of the business that I'm working for. So I think startup was a way to experience that, no? Working in a startup, right? I don't think I ever thought I would be starting a company anytime soon at that time.
And but you were still leaving the safe confines of a larger company and going into a startup. That sometimes scares some people because you've established a certain lifestyle. Like they say, a lot of people talk about how hedge fund traders and investment bankers in Wall Street make millions of dollars of money, but every year, which most people only make in a lifetime. But then you start looking at how they have actually jacked up their whole lifestyle to actually pay for all of the money that they're making on an annual basis. They keep very little of it. And the prospect of actually going to work somewhere else terrifies them, because that means they have to give up all the perks that they've been enjoying. But at that time, did something of that sort, a smaller version of that, play out in your mind at all?
I mean, to some extent, I had only worked for other companies for 5 years, right? So it was not like I was um, making a huge salary like nowadays the way most funded companies pay you, right? At least in startup employees. And in those days, um, startup employees would take like maybe 20 to 30 or maybe up to 40% of a drop in market salary compared to bigger companies or established public companies you're working for. So I wouldn't say I had my living costs already jacked up so much that I would have to compromise a lot if I worked in a startup. But I do remember I did take a 20-30% of a pay cut. But again, that's for you're trading off learning and fun for a little bit of less money, right? But in the longer run, if the startup does well, you have equity, or if the startup does well and you are responsible for critically responsible for making a big portion of that impact, then usually startups reward you with more salaries, more equity down the road, right? And you
Right.
can take the same experience and later on go to a bigger company or a larger company and make up for whatever you had less in terms of salary. So I always took a long-term view on that. But also, I don't live a very luxurious lifestyle. You can have wealth, but not necessarily live a rich lifestyle, because a rich lifestyle requires expenses. But having wealth is more about peace of mind, right? And also thinking about, what can you do with that wealth instead of just splurging it. Maybe you want to, invest, or maybe you want to open businesses, or you want to start some ideas, or do maybe charity a bit, right? So that's how I think about wealth, not necessarily about, living a super rich lifestyle.
Having that long view, the 15-year, it's very rare for someone to take a 15-year view or 20-year view on things and then expect that it'll work out. But if you do look back, you'll see that most people, when they've taken that, and if the foundation values are right, it actually does play out eventually, right? Short of a
Yeah.
catastrophe happening on the planet, but whatever you're working on does work out. And then, so top box. So I suppose this was around the same time Eric Yuan was working for Cisco and then dreaming up the Zoom product.
Yeah.
Two separate
Yeah.
people
So
working for web conferencing. Yeah.
yeah, I think we were few years. Yeah, 2008 is when I joined Talkbox. It was funded by Sequoia Capital and Bain Capital, and they were one of the first to imagine a no download, no install version of video conferencing. Right? You just go to the website, log in, and you open up a two-party or a multi-party, live video conferencing. Right? So those were we were on the first place in that space, but we were probably a bit too early in terms of maturity of the technology, live streaming or live video conference technology, to be super good in terms of quality, right? High resolution, less latency, low like high echo cancellation from a noise reduction perspective. But yeah, I mean, I worked there for close to a year, and I saw what it feels like to work in a fast-paced, uh, yet chaotic, right? But still have the fun, because you're just day in and out. You are solving new problems, almost a new problem every day, and scrambling for resources, thinking creatively to work in a small team, but look at big problems and have big ambitions. And I think 2011, 2012 is when I think Eric from ex WebEx Cisco days, he was probably working on Zoom. I can't be for sure, but yeah, people usually think about similar problems in a similar horizon or time frame. If
Right.
you're thinking about something, most likely in the world, there's a high likelihood somebody else is also thinking about solving the same problem. Yeah.
True. True. I totally agree with that. There is a fair chance another three or four teams are attempting the same problem, and it all depends on how resourceful, how much of a hustle they have, and also the context around them that will help them win.
Yeah, and I would say one thing, right? Startups are usually 10-year, or at least 10-year journeys, right? To get to a meaningful scale, or, for you to define it as a success, right? Not just taking funding as a success, but actually having customers and having a good product out there, which can last sustainably for a long term. I really feel uh, startups are, irrespective of the size, right, or ambition, they are marathons with a lot of sprints in between, right? So even though few teams might be working, they may be better than you in terms of talent, but whoever takes a longer view, if you have more stamina, and which can give you more perseverance and more patience to actually think as long as possible in terms of your horizon, right? You would end up making your chances to be successful in your own definition, right? Without worrying a lot about who else is solving, how big they are, and what is their internal definition of success, right? Within a time frame. If your time frame is infinite, then you can keep going at it. Yeah.
Right. Right. No, amazing. I think you touched upon so many crucial concepts, but I'll pick on a couple you touched upon a couple of minutes ago. One is the concept of making a big impact and being able to see that you had such a big role to play in that impact. That's one, which is what happens at startups. The second one is the fact that you are solving so many problems on a daily basis. For most people, every product looks very simple, but there's a great deal of architecting that has happened at the back end. But if we start peeling that, there are so many, every high level problem has a hierarchy of low level problems that it is creating in operations, in technology, in pricing, in finances. So for someone who's excited about being at the cutting edge of things, startups are definitely the great place to be. There's no doubt about it. But what the interesting aspect is that impact part, which I don't think is widely not understood. A lot of people, especially in the Indian case, a lot of people work remote, and they work on products once they are established, they are mature, because there is always a fear that if once a remote team comes in supporting it, what if the customer miss out that? But it also creates a situation whereby they very rarely meet with the customer. They don't understand the cultural context in which the customer is actually living or going through. So that creates its own set of advantages and disadvantages. But if those people want to cut their teeth on products, the best place is to work on a startup, right? So amazing.
Yeah.
So let's so then Topbox, and then how did SignEasy come into play?
Yeah, by the way, I think I'm not sure if I'm hearing you right. It's Talkbox, Tok, Talkbox. Yeah,
Talkbox.
that,
Oh,
yeah,
yes, I know Talkbox. Okay, I
yeah,
was hearing it as Topbox. I know Talkbox because for Mango Mobile TV, it existed in the year 2011-12 as well, isn't it?
yeah. It still exists today. It has been acquired, but the fundamental, I think they have become an API platform to embed live video conferencing into other solutions. In fact, I don't know if Riverside is using Talkbox. I don't know, the tool that you're using for
Right,
recording this podcast, right?
right.
These are the applications that can be built on top of their technology now. It's a developer platform mostly right
Right,
now.
right.
They
No,
they
no,
shift they shifted from being a SaaS product to a developer product. Yeah,
no. I remember Talkbox
yeah.
very well because we had integrated Talkbox into our application at that time. Those were the days where you could
Okay.
launch apps on Facebook, and we had a particular use
Mm-hmm.
case where before a film is released, we would get the actor who was in the film actually
Sure.
come out and
Yeah,
then talk to his audience. And
I know. Yeah.
the best way
Mm-hmm.
to do that was through Talkbox. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And so I know, amazing product, and the ease with which we could integrate it into both our web application as well as the Facebook application was something. And the beauty was it was highly affordable, which is what even enabled us to integrate and offer such high quality service at that time.
Glad to know. I'm glad to know. I could make some impact in whatever way in the early stages on your own product and startup too.
Go figure, I didn't know your magic hand was in it.
Yeah.
And then, so then how did SignEasy happen?
So right after working at Talkbox, I I saw what the excitement is about. Realized what the fun is about. Then I thought, hey, what if I could, scratch my own problem and come up with a solution, right? So I had been an engineer for a long time, almost 7, 8 years by that time, and I felt I could probably have a bigger impact, even more bigger impact, and maybe more meaning, right? More meaning and more purpose if I solve a problem that is very close to me, either myself or my friends or people that I know, if they experience a problem and I would like to solve it, right? So I was looking for an idea like that, participated in a couple of hackathons. This is the time, 2009, when iPhone had just come out. iOS SDK was out for developers to, build more apps or, solve more mobile-centric problems, right? And so I built an app called Quick Hindi to translate from English to Hindi, right? Now, just as an experiment, right? And this is before Duolingo and all of the other apps became more popular. So I launched that Quick Hindi. Then I also launched with a small team called an app called Lift, but with the name LIFT, right?
Okay.
Not the lift that we know, LYFT, but LIFT. And the idea was to open your phone and get a cab ordered. get a taxi ordered, right? So these were some of the ideas that I either played with or I launched an app with a small team, just hackathon teams, but they didn't go too far because we didn't have a solid team who were passionate to, invest their time, in a more committed manner, right? So, but that gave me the exposure. What does it feel to take an idea from from a piece of paper, right, like a napkin paper, and then, you know, build a prototype per se. And I was just waiting. I was just waiting for another big problem to come to my attention, and that happened in a place I could have never thought of, right? Uh, After I left TalkBox, I had interviewed at another company, at a Bay Area startup based in Palo Alto. And while I was waiting to hear about any potential job offer from them, I took a small vacation in Mexico, right? And this is in Cancun, near Cancun, in the Riviera Maya region of Mexico. And while I was there, I suddenly heard the news from them over email. Hey, they would like to, offer me the job, and they wanted me to sign the offer letter and send it as soon as possible. And that's what here I was just having a vacation in a remote town, beach town there, and it took me a few hours to scramble for a printer, print those pages out, sign it, then figure out a way to scan or fax it back. It just felt like a very a lot of pain, felt like a lot of inconvenience. Of course, for a little thing to where you want to just sign and send something back, specifically when you have smartphones like iPhone in those days, I felt this could be done in a much easier way, right? And that led to the idea of a mobile app at that time. Hey, what if any consumer or a user can simply upload an attachment from their email to an app and then sign using their finger on a touchscreen device, and then insert the signature, put your name and date, and send it back, right? So that was the earliest version that I could conceptualize at that time, and that idea kind of stuck in me for another 6 months. Even though I went ahead and joined the other startup job, this idea was always in my mind in the nights and weekends. And at some point, I just couldn't wait any further and decided to use my iPhone development experience to start prototyping the app. And once I saw some technical feasibility of it, I became more and more confident that yes, we could build an app, and this would be actually useful at that time for many more people like myself, whether you are a business traveler or executive, or you are just a consumer, want to sign an offer letter or want to sign a loan application, or maybe a rental lease, whatever it is that you sign as a consumer. This would be a cool app to do, cool app to use. So after around maybe 8 months of working in the startup, I decided, no, this is what I want to do. Take a chance, and see where it goes. And that's how I started working full time on the idea of a mobile app to sign and send documents on the go.
We'll jump into this, but let's go back to the other two ideas that you worked on. One is the quick Hindi, and for those listeners, perhaps you and I, we were there. It was not unheard of. We used to see Rosetta Stone advertisements everywhere. You get off the plane, you see all these translation, the Duolingo equivalent that you're talking about right now. And given the number of Indians and the outsourcing boom that it had, so quick Hindi could have possibly gone somewhere. That's one. The other thing is Lyft. And those were the days where Uber and Lyft were both in their early days. I'm not quite sure about Lyft's founding story, but I know Uber was already taking root or some shape in San Francisco Bay Area at that time. So both of them, well, quick Hindi possibly a little more of a niche audience, which could eventually grow into something larger. Lyft was
other
something
languages,
for the other languages. So Lyft was Lyft had all the trappings of solving the urban mobility problem. Uh, uh, how did you? You just made a quick passing mention that perhaps the teams were not that committed. Were you working full time at that time, and this was something which was a side hustle? And what made you?
Yeah.
Was it anything other than the teams that said, okay, maybe it's not the right timing, or something else that you said that sort of forced you to give up?
Well, yeah. So mainly about the Lyft with an
I
LIFT, right?
Right.
LIFT, Lyft app. We even registered a domain at that time, liftapp.com. I think it was the people that I worked with. We all got together in a weekend hackathon
Ah,
somewhere, right? So we
okay.
really didn't know each other. We didn't like, we haven't worked with each other, or we didn't like, we are friends or anything, right? So there was no strong relationship, right?
Okay.
Um, while everybody thought, hey, we could, everybody had a full-time job, and we thought, hey, let's spend another month after the hackathon ended to see if there is more, if there is a real demand for something like that. And beyond demand, also you need to have the expertise, right? Expertise of, or at least the interest to dive further, to learn what else is needed to make this a real life app. We're talking about usability, talking about GPS limitations at that time. GPS were not as advanced as what they are today, right, on the mobile phones. And um, see, I think I would say lack of knowing each other really well, and also lack of enough conviction to give up your full-time jobs and spend more time, or at least even if you don't give up your full-time jobs, most times what happens is, whether it's founders or engineers who start a new idea, they work on it for 6 to 12 months on the side, right, before they really think it can go somewhere. Uh, so maybe it's more about, in retrospect, it's more about not knowing each other really well enough to put that side hustle into motion. That probably was, led to differences. This is not something we want to do, and that chemistry was missing to really solve a hard problem like this at that stage. And also it's about passion, right? Sometimes passion develops over a period of time. I wasn't Around the same time, I wasn't going to be in the US for too long. I was already thinking about moving back to India. So that means you have to be in that market to really experience the problem firsthand, right? If you don't spend
Right.
enough time in the market, you won't know your customers. You won't know
That's right.
what they want. So how can you solve a problem as a founder if you are not in the market?
Right. Right. Uh, so you were still in the hunt for an idea, but I'll still ask this sort of obvious question. That commute problem was still large enough, and you use this uh, expression called "scratch your own itch" kind of an idea. Perhaps I don't know, you didn't face that problem. Well, the team, there are some ideas. So, for instance, there is a timing issue with an idea where you talked about Talkbox early on, and maybe the readiness of the ecosystem itself to offer some things. And then there is the um, and then there is your own relatability to that idea, which possibly is what you are hinting when you meant passion. So
Yeah.
so were there other filters that you used to say, okay, I'm not going to work on the lift problem or the commute problem because of so and so, and therefore I will continue to look for some other idea? And so how did you really zero in on the document signing idea itself? And
Yeah.
were there others that you were throwing around at that time?
Yeah. If you there are a few ways to think about this, right? When founders or anybody wants to build a product, and if that product ever becomes a business or not, that is just natural evolution, right? It's very hard to predict, scratching your own itch will be a viable business or not, but at least it can be a viable product, because that's, you just develop, you write your code, you show it to your customers, and if they like it, that means you have a product that works, right? Whether that's a market fit for somebody to pay for it, is for enough scale, where other people are motivated to solve the problem that you think is one of the biggest problems you should solve, or the world should care about. Those are other reasons why something will mature into a business or not, right? But I think I thought about it as, timing was right, right? Phones had come out, getting a cab was something everybody has faced this, right? You have to wait on the street, and then and sometimes if you're in a dense city, it's easier. If you're not in a dense city, if you don't live in a dense city, urban city, then you have to call a number and tell them where you are, and they'll come and pick you up, right? So we knew the timing was right. But this is this slide that I always keep in mind by Bill Gross, right? The person, the founder behind IDEO Labs, right?
Right.
He talks about there are 5 elements that are necessary for a startup to succeed or a company to succeed, right? And this is in the rank of order, right? From a percentage of companies which have ended becoming successful, right? Timing is the first, then it is the team and your pace and commitment for execution. Third is the idea, is it an outlier idea at the time? Fourth and fifth are business model, and the last one is funding. How much resources do you have, right? And that has, I could relate, how that has worked for SignEasy. But at that time, when we were thinking about these other ideas, I think timing was right. Team, obviously, we didn't have a team, and we needed a team, right? If you could build it yourself for the first 6 to 12 months, you can think about getting a team later on, because you don't want to wait for the perfect team to start on something. But I didn't have all the skill sets to do it on my own at that time. And at the same time, I didn't have a team. The team didn't really think, they want to work on it together for too long. And the third was the idea itself, right? How passionate you are about it. And for some reason, I guess it was missing at that time. This is the problem I want to solve, right? So a mix of, lack of a team for committed execution and my own passion towards this was probably missing at that time. Man, you only know about this in retrospect, right? You don't see this when you're making these decisions. Sometimes it could be a miss also, right?
Right.
Maybe I made a biggest mistake, but I don't think about like that. I have something else that's keeping me busy and gives me equal sense of, if not the scale, but at least gives me a sense of both scale and purpose, right?
Right.
Meaning per se.
Right. Yeah, I know. You don't know what you didn't know at that time, so there's no point fussing over it, right? So there's one other aspect that I want to touch on, which is again sort of in your the 6 or 9 month journey where you stayed with this idea that you spoke about, which is initially you were thinking about it in more generic terms, which was, okay, somebody wants to send a document, and then you went on and spoke about people on the move, sales professionals, people in real estate, people who need documentation, who exchange documents. So the markets started crystallizing in your mind. And this is something that I've always noticed, that many ideas, even if they're scratch your itch kind of ideas, we may know maybe 8 or 10 people that face that problem. And a lot of times we are dismissive of its impact for the fundamental reason that we cannot see beyond the 10 or the 20. And the way ideas actually catch on is when you solve for those 10 or 20 successfully, you start a lot of people who had that problem but didn't even come out and said that they had that problem, because all you can see are only the 10 or 20 people that are saying, hey, I have this problem. Once you solve it emphatically for this 10 or 20 people, there are another 200,000 people waiting in the wings who will come and tell you, I can't believe you solved this. So now all of a sudden, you just made a giant leap from a market size of about 20 people to 200,000 people. So that is why some of these look like, hockey stick curve growth companies anyway, right? So great. So let's continue. So 6-9 months, and then so did you launch the product while you were employed?
No, I launched it 6 months after I left the company. Right. Okay. I've been working for it for probably close to 3-4 months before I left the company, and then it took me 6-7 months to launch the first version of the app on Apple App Store.
Okay.
And and quickly after that, within few months, I decided to. Obviously, I saw downloads on the App Store. People are leaving some early reviews, so it validates that yes, some people care about it, not just you, but some other people also want it. But to really get qualitative feedback, you have to start showing it to people in real life, right? And I presented at some tech conferences like these technology meetup groups, right, where you showcase your newly launched product and etc. And that's where I saw some I would say very engaged feedback. Yes, I would love to use this, and some people even made a comment, oh, what if this was a small feature inside Adobe Acrobat? I would even use it even more, right? If people could relate to, hey, Adobe Acrobat already opens PDF documents, and what if they give a feature to draw and insert your signature? Maybe not on the mobile, it will handle on the desktop case, but the problem is value, right? Whether you're on the go or in your office or at your home, if you receive a PDF document to be signed and sent, what do, right? You usually print. So the larger problem was already seen, and that's what I heard from them. What I was trying to solve is, can I solve it really well on the go with the mobile app instead, right? And it's very important, right? There might be bigger problems that you could solve, but as a startup, we have to be very focused on one or two key ways or key pain points. And then think about it, expanding your problem set later on, right? But it's important to be razor focused on that one idea that you could do much better compared to alternatives in the market.
Interesting. So you got both direct feedback in person where you showcase this, and you got remote random feedback as well from people who had downloaded it. Most entrepreneurs that are building products would possibly just get energized with the first one, right? You're seeing downloads, you're seeing people that are saying, okay, this is fantastic. But I suppose it is in sort of your ethos to go in and say, okay, I appreciate this feedback, but I want to understand the larger context around it, which is why you went to that real world places. Interesting.
Because you want to hear no's also, right? You also want to hear the no's. Why somebody is saying no to, hey, why is this not a good solution, or why would somebody not want to use the solution, or other doubts they may have.
Right.
And other reasons also you want to showcase this is you're probably looking for partners to work with you, designers, engineers. Are they excited about this idea? And that's how you hire people, right? When you haven't raised funding, or when you are not a serial entrepreneur, people don't know about your name. They don't believe you. Why should I join you? Right.
Right.
So this sometimes just interacting with the founder helps you. Hey, I would like to work with this person because the idea seems cool.
And you launched it while you were in the US.
Yeah, launched in the US. I think it was in late 2010.
Okay.
And that is the time when I had pre-decided to move back to India. And it just worked because even though I wasn't in the market for too long after I launched it, but I had lived in the US for 10 years, right? So I knew what customers were looking for. And also I was solving the problem for my own sake. So I'm the first user of my own product, right? So founders will have a gut sense, sixth sense of the first few features. You don't need to listen to customers, right? The first few features of first 2 to 3 years, what you want to build. It's just some feeling. You can't really, say it why, but you have some sense there. So that helped me. Even though I moved back to India, for the first few years, I was the product manager. Even though I was the founder, but I was a product manager and engineer myself, building this further.
Right. Yeah. I call it, you have an intuitive feel for the things that need to be in there. And there are other extreme ways. Some people say, build with. You can't build everything with the market. And like Steve Jobs says, until you show people something what they want, or they won't even know what they want, what they need. So
Yeah.
you already have an intuitive feel for the product and what the product should say, and then you put it out and you start refining it. If you're expecting the market to bring you the bigger ideas, that very rarely happens. So there's a fundamental nuance there in building with. And then
Yeah.
talk about that initial journey. I think before we do that, let's talk about your scale numbers. What sort of scale are you at right now? Users, downloads, revenues, that kind of stuff.
So, yeah, so we are little north over 7 million users in over 180 countries in 24 languages in our mobile apps and our web app. We have over 160,000 paying users, and these paying customers or users span across 35,000 businesses of all kinds. You could be a freelancer to a consultant to a small Soho entrepreneurs, like small office, home office entrepreneurs, to all the way to startups, medium to mid-sized companies with 1,000 or even 1,000 to 5,000 employees from many industries worldwide. And these customers pay us anywhere between $100 to $200 a year to all the way to $40,000 to $50,000 a year. Right? So there's a varying spectrum of customers in that mix.
Awesome. So you're at what, like 25 million ARR right now, around that figure?
No, we're not at that scale yet.
Okay.
But I'm happy to share, like we have been growing at 40% year over year profitably, and we hope we hope we can break the 10 million ARR target. Right now we're in the high single digit million ARR. We hope we can break the 10 million, the ideal scale number 10 million. So,
and I'm thinking significant profitability.
Yeah, we free cash flow positive, profitability in the low single teens, which is good. We want to reinvest as much as possible into growth, right, but while having some sort of a sustainable angle to to make sure we can control our own destiny. Yeah.
Awesome. 7 million users, 160,000 paying users, 160 countries, 24 languages. My God, that's have you been to
180
countries?
Yeah.
180 countries. Oh, awesome. And how many of those countries have you been to?
Irrespective of whether we have customers or not in those countries, I like traveling to places to learn about people and culture and other things. So, but I think I've been maybe in close to 15 to 20 countries so far. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So when did you get so talk about the initial, so the App Store got in some initial users, obviously. And then eventually the Play Store, I guess, I'm sure once the Android Play Store became something tangible, which was around the 2010, 2011 era, then I'm sure that started providing some sort of support as in terms of users as well. Talk about that journey, talk about that point. I want to spend some time on the bootstrapping angle, because you haven't raised any funding, have you?
We are mostly bootstrapped, but late last year we raised a very small round from our advisors who happen to be operators or founders and CEOs of their respective companies. Okay. So it was mainly for their guidance, put some money and also give us the guidance and help we need as we think about our options to grow further. Yeah. So it was not it was more of a strategic advisory round. Yeah.
Right. So I'll ask a different question, and because for people who have tried to use a product like SignEasy will understand that there is a product called DocuSign. But at that point in time, today DocuSign is a very, very large business. It is, if I'm not mistaken, the valuation is touted to be around $1 billion. What that actually tells us is around the time you launched it and you saw traction, there was all possibility for you to showcase this, raise funding, and maybe put on a different growth path. So,
Yeah.
so it's one thing to bootstrap because you initially believe in it, and then where I say people don't see it because there is this concept of notional value or latent demand that others don't see. You are able to see it because you're in the weeds. So that, in some sense, entrepreneurs are best not to waste their time trying to convince others, because you build it to a certain point, you bootstrap it, and then when you realize that you've got all the scale levers in place or the scale elements in place, then you sort of add a cocktail mix of funding. Again, not every company needs funding. Mailchimp hasn't raised funding. They do $500 million in revenue every year, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think
Yeah.
they've raised funding.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
talk about that bootstrapping journey. Why did you decide to bootstrap? And until last year, you seem to have, there is a specific reason for you to raise funding, which is have some skin in the game when you actually advise us. So when your money is at stake, your advice is going to sound a lot different than when your money is not at stake. I suppose that's the thinking. So talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the reason I did not raise funding in the first, I guess, 9, 10 years of the journey is a mix of serendipity and also choice, right? Serendipity is I had moved back to India. So, hiring, working with a small set of engineers and designers is a lot more affordable for the first 3 years of the company when you are still building a product, you're still figuring out monetization, and seeing real scale to have enough money in the bank to support the payroll, right? And that was easy. It was much easier to be done in India than in the US. I think in the first 3 or 4 years, we probably grew to 10 or 15 people. And to have the same set of people in the US, I would have been forced to raise the funding, right? Because you can't hire engineers, designers, without the funding in place. So it felt like, yes, if I can do this for a little bit more longer without external capital, let's do it, right? And also spend the time as a single founder. You don't have enough time to talk to customers and prospective investors at the same time. So
Right.
time was also a constraint. So time was a constraint. I was in India. Uh, it just led to bootstrapping a lot more longer in terms of affordability, right? And also on the side, I realized I was in India. I didn't have any connections with investors at that time, and I had just moved, from US, with an engineering background. Now, trying to launch a product and grow a company. So there was, I felt I had to explain a lot about, hey, why this idea is important, and this is something that the users want it, right? In the US, people would have listened to and investors because DocuSign existed at that time, and we were going from a mobile angle for the end user or the consumer or the small business. So if I was in the US, I could have spent some time raising that money, but unfortunately, that was not the case. So you have to work within your means, right? You're doing it because of your passion. You're doing it because you feel this product is useful to you and a lot more people like yourself. You think you could last longer without raising money, and you don't want to spend time talking to investors, right? So so it's not as one-dimensional decision, right? You just go with what feels right and what is the need of the hour at that time. Where is your time being spent for the
True.
maximum impact that you could create? So that kind of quickly led to us to being bootstrapped for almost 9 years, and you don't stop thinking about raising. You still think about it every few quarters or every year. You think about, hey, is this the right time to raise? But then you also look at your own growth needs. How many people do you want to hire? How much is your revenue, and can you still afford it? Okay, let's really take those calls, right? There's no right or wrong answer, to be honest, whether to raise money or not money. But as long as your customers are growing and they're happy with you and your product is becoming better, you are solving bigger problems. Those are the metrics that should tell you, are you, taking the company in the right direction.
So let's jump into the scale and the growth angle itself.
Mhm.
Uh, how was the initial acquiring paid customers? What sort of challenges did you face back then? When did it really occur to you that, yes, I think this is going to be a viable business? I loved the nuance that you put out there where you said something could be a viable product, but is it a viable business? It takes some amount of time for you to find that out. So talk about those parts.
Yeah. So it took us 3 years to probably reach 1 million downloads on iOS and Android App Store. And our early monetization was one-time upgrade. Is free to use, download it and free to use. But if you want more features, you just do a one-time upgrade, like maybe first time it was $3 and then it was $10 because we were in the era of non-subscriptions, right? It was just Apple supported in-app purchases, but subscriptions had not taken off yet. So we relied on whatever business model was possible at that time. And being a small team, we became profitable. Probably around 2014 or 15. We reached those few million downloads, and we were able to monetize, and we became profitable. Um, and Sorry, what was the other question, Krishna?
So when you reach these millions of downloads, were there any growth strategies or tactics that you employed that worked for
Oh,
you?
okay, sure. Yeah. So, and that's where okay. So that's where timing matters, right? Uh, when we launched, we are probably the oldest mobile e-signing app today that is independent, right? Because we are one of the first few ones. Other companies have either shut down or acquired, who started around the same time as us in the mobile side, mobile e-signing. So Apple quickly realized that we were solving something very unique. It was innovative in its own time. Customers loved it because there were reviewers on the App Store, and our downloads will keep increasing because we were launching um, iterations or improvements in a very fast cycle and very consistently, right? And so Apple saw that, and they started featuring us more and more. So we used, a partner like Apple's goodwill that hey, they are a platform. They want to promote more innovative developers, and we are one of the first few ones at the time. So it's a virtuous cycle, right? We'll see more reviews. People are downloading and paying for it. Apple features us again. We get more reviews again, and that kind of led organically to those first few million downloads. And we also used App Store optimization, which is Apple doesn't publicly show what keywords we are using to optimize our App Store descriptions and the App Store and the app name and description also, right? The short description. So we also relied on that, no? Like making sure App Store optimization is in place, making sure the user experience is great, so Apple recognizes our design standards, making sure the monetization is the product is packaged in such a manner so people can free users want to upgrade to a paid package, right? The packaging needs to be done correctly, so you see more conversions. So these are some of the very organic, product focused, you know, very obvious ones. To you don't have the money to acquire users using advertising, so you have to do all of these things that is within your hands, right? So and that kind of along with timing of being one of the first few apps means more recognition, just helped us to grow faster.
Interesting. So the one of the key aspects that worked was the Apple guys featuring you. That was one. Was
Mhm.
there any other inflection point that sort of became the wind beneath your wings?
No, for the first 6 years, it's mainly Apple and Google, right?
Okay.
We, you know, so because of innovation, ease of use, and just amazing customer love because of they love our user experience, and the demand was the demand is obvious, right? People would like to sign documents on an iPhone, on an iPad, on an Android device, or a tablet. Um, so we heard from Apple's developer relations team, hey, they would like to do a lot more with us. So so we got featured in Apple commercial twice. One for iPads to increase productivity for small businesses, and the second was an iPhone ad to to use your phone on the go, but with the security and peace of mind in using Touch ID at that time, right? So those two ads suddenly put our brand in front of a lot more users. We also got a lot more credibility among existing users who would refer us to their friends and colleagues. And then we organically rose to grew our ranks to top 100 business apps in the US. Right, we even reached number one ranking in business apps for grossing revenue for a few weeks. Right, so there's so it's the same virtual cycle basically kicked in again and again. Right, not only App Store coverage, but also offline coverage through Apple Ads, you know, highly ranked app on the App Store. So more people discover it, even though they may not search for us, PDF signing or document signing. But the fact that you're curious to see who are the top 100 apps will give us a lot more exposure for people to, hey, I didn't know I have this problem, but now I can see why I would use this, right? uh, like unaware of problems, but they know they will use it if somebody tells them or they come across it. So those are some of the inflection point in up till 2016, and finally it ended up being we were featured in Apple retail stores. If you walk into any Apple retail store, even in Imagine store in India, Imagine and some of the other Apple authorized resellers, right? There's a high chance you would see SignEasy on the demo devices. And we have been working with them for the last 4 or 5 years with Apple, where every year we update our binary and they use the demo app to showcase the capability to users or to visitors in retail stores.
Right.
So pure product focus, customer obsession, design excellence is what kind of kept us going for the first 5 6 years, with a small team.
So, quote unquote, a signature app, and literally a signature app, and that brings out the signature touch features of that
Yeah, yeah,
application,
it's a
right?
it's a nice way to say it. A signature signing app. Yeah.
Right? A
Mhm.
signature app showcasing the signature ability of that
Okay.
particular device and solving that problem. Uh,
Mhm.
Interesting. So, focused on the basics, and I want to maybe just spend a minute in passing on the App Store optimization part. Most
Mhm.
mythical understanding of that goes stuff it with keywords, put your description with keywords, that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
that's a very misguided way of thinking about it, because ultimately the whole point is, what are the users using to describe their problem? And so users are not saying, when they search for it, okay, is there a mobile signing app? They are not searching for something like that. Oh, sign with my phone, or sign a PDF. When you start getting in front of those users, you have that learning. So did that play some sort of a role in this organic growth? Any bit at all?
Yeah. Yes, we tried multiple keywords and phrases, right? Document signing, mobile signing, PDF signing. In some cases, even a lot more specific, like uh, invoice signing or NDA signing, right? So use different combinations, and but one is the keyword optimization, right? And sometimes you can also get signals for what keywords to use or phrases to use by just looking at Google search keywords, right?
Right.
Google gives you keyword console where you can come up with related keywords, right? If this is what people are searching for, it's likely they would search for the same on a mobile, on an app store too, right?
Okay.
But that's just one aspect of app store optimization. The other aspects are how good is your description from a readability perspective, right? Your app store assets, the quality of images and videos, the conversion rate that happens from a person going into the description versus actually clicking the install. I think there are a lot more hidden signals Apple uses, and nobody can say for sure. You can only do things that are within your control again, right?
Right.
And Apple usually recommends, Apple or Google, they recommend make sure your App Store asset, which is App Store description, and it's treated like a front door, right? Your front door of the house has to really look appealing for customers to, feel welcome, customers to feel more trust for your brand beyond what you write, right? It has to be the overall appearance of your brand name, your app icon, your colors, your short description below the product name or app name. Can you quickly glance through the description and make sense of what this app does and why should somebody use it for the benefits it promises, right? And then the reviews, your average rating of reviews, the type of reviews you generate. And the last thing I would add is uh, how often you release versions, right? Are you releasing every few weeks? That means, Apple or Google think, that means as a developer, we are committed to continue to improve the feature set and the experience of the app, right? And also how many crashes, right? Is your app crashing a lot? Now, sometimes, if your app crashes a lot, there is a little bit of a, health indicator, right, from that. So I think there are a lot more, it's a lot more hidden signs
Right.
that, at least I'm not aware of, but we consider that to make sure organically we can continue to, we grow in the
Interesting.
app store.
So let's talk about challenges. So I'm assuming all of that spotlight being a signature app that was showcased there um,
Hmm.
has propelled your trajectory. And the fact that, and I'm also assuming in some form or fashion that you stayed focused completely, mostly on mobile or completely on mobile. And this has propelled your growth further. And the foray into the 200 180 countries, I suppose, is all driven by the app stores, both Google and Apple app stores, right?
Yeah, it
Um,
increases your distribution. Yeah,
right, right.
reach. Yeah.
So, have you ever faced any sort of a threat or a challenge, or not just to growth, but in general, what sort of challenges have you faced and how have you overcome them?
Yeah, I mean, the threats are always there, right? As a startup, even from a big incumbent or a bigger competitor with more resources, out marketing you, right? Or another startup comes in with a vast superior solution, right? So I don't think threats will ever go down. It's just that you know, how do you respond to those threats in a more calculated manner with a longer term view in place, right? In the short term, everything looks like a threat, right? Um, but as long as your customers, you are listening close to your customers, pay attention to your competitors for inspiration or avoiding the mistakes that they might have done. But your first, source of truth is coming from your customers, right? What are your customers telling you? How much they are in love with the product, how often they're using, what else do they want from you? Um, and we rely on that to kind of drown out any sort of threats that could take away your attention, right? So we
Talk
rely on
about a
that. So that has been
specific,
a challenge.
talk about
Hmm.
something that has really challenged you in this journey and that has tested you, and how
Oh,
did you
okay.
respond to it?
Yeah. So there are many. Let me think about. I guess being a solo founder, right? Being a solo founder in the first few years when you don't have a strong management team, you have a set of passionate, talented developers who will do everything that you tell them to do, right? But um, you want your weaknesses to be covered or at least be reduced by a stronger management team in place, right? But at the beginning, you have to think about everything, right? You're looking at 10 different functions, all the way to from product design to customer, to market to customer marketing to all the way to customer support, and sometimes even doing a bit of engineering if needed, right? So that was a lot of challenge for a long time for me, um, and over the years. It's not like you can do much. You just have to do what is the need of the hour. But over the years, specifically the last 3 to 4 years, I've built, at least we have been able to attract and grow existing folks to mid-level managers to all the way to leadership functions at this time, right? And so now the job is much easier, a bit more easier, I would say. Uh, and the way I think about my time being split as a solo founder, in those times versus now, is that now I'm much more thoughtful about what is really important and urgent versus what is important and not urgent, right? And can I do more of the important but not urgent, more of that, and then only when it is needed I need to look at urgent items, right? So it's more of a better time management to kind of not drown myself into a lot more same day or overnight things that I should be looking at, but the team can look at it and I don't need to look at it, right? So that's how the evolution has happened from an early world, from an earlier stage challenge to now where I am.
So you mentioned you gave two examples, one being outmarketed by a larger company or a newer
Yeah,
startup launches. So I'm assuming you didn't pick those just out of random. I'm assuming those are some threats that you have faced. Um,
yeah. And
how,
being
how did you
bootstrapped,
respond to
no,
those?
you just take a long-term view on it, right? Even though we are in a space that is heavily competitive, and some companies have, in the same segment or the adjacent in the same market, in the adjacent market, there are a few competitors who have been funded like 20-30 million dollars, right? Um, so yes, you can be outmarketed, and at some point, you need to raise funding, and that's why we raised a little bit of funding last year. It's our you know getting our toes into the world of in the world of growth capital per se, right? But the people we raised money from are like Girish from Freshworks, founder and CEO, then Mike Stoppelman and Jeremy Stoppelman from Yelp, Matt Rizal from T Seats, now acquired by Intuit, Anand Chandrasekharan, an ex-entrepreneur but now an executive VP at Facebook earlier and now at Five9, and Vijay Raipati from Nutanix and Pallav from Fusion Charts. So all of these folks are essentially who have taken a similar path of either raising a capital or really aligning with strategic partners to kind of reduce the threat of competition, right? So we feel like that's one way we have responded in some sense. But I would say that the more of our efforts in responding to competition have been to be more thoughtful and be really innovative, right, about where we spend our resources. Even though we are a smaller team, but we are more agile. We are more nimble to listen to customer needs. If a customer is unhappy with us, we will solve it in 24 to 48 hours, or maybe max within 72 to 72 hours to 5 days, maybe, right?
Wow.
But that sort of nimbleness in responding to customers is what's going to carry the goodwill of the customer, because they would know, as a smaller company, we care more about their success. If they have a problem with the product, we'll listen to them and solve it with the utmost intentions in mind, right? um, and we don't also try to be very focused, right? We know what our internal definitions of success are. We need to grow at a certain percentage year over year. We need to have a certain retention numbers. We need to have certain profitability numbers in mind. So we try to put the right people in the right projects, and we also don't over invest, or we don't take too many bold bets, which sometimes could work against us, but that's fine, right? No, we try to take calculated bets and not try to grow just for the sake of it by putting resources in ideas that are not proven yet.
Right.
We only have limited bets to take. So that's so I think, just to summarize, take a lot more longer view. Even though somebody could raise money or could outmarket you, but sometimes it's good because it also educates the market, right? It also means more customers are going to look for a solution.
Right.
And if we are a better solution with more affordability and with more innovation, then we would show up in that first five, vendors when a customer is going to look for a solution, right?
Right.
So out marketing helps sometimes if you can take advantage of it creatively.
Well, I think kudos to you for leading and keeping it all together. It mustn't be easy. I'm sure you've received enough inbound funding offers or inbound acquisition offers as well, right? Because at some point in time, you have to be grounded to say this is exactly what I signed up for. I'm sure there has been more than one or two juicy offer on the table where you could just pocket a few millions and then walk away from all of this and still start something, maybe a couple of years down the line, or even agree for an acquisition and become part of something larger. How do you respond to something like that, and why would you refuse?
uh, you grow a company, because you want to infuse, right? You want to infuse a certain element of your vision, your mission, and your not just you but the leadership team and the core team, right? I think ideally a company should exist to grow number of customers and keep growing as long as possible independently, right? Whether you raise money or not, if you raise money, there are more partners who are invested in your success, right?
Right.
But acquisition at the end is getting acquired at the end is just another way of getting more resources, right? Either more capital resources or getting easier access to your intended customer segment, right? And probably better knowledge also because of better talent that you could work with, to turn your big vision into a reality faster, right? So yes, from time to time you do receive offers for funding, right, or offers for acquisition. And in the past we have said no for multiple reasons because we felt we didn't need to, right? And in some cases it just wasn't the right fit, right? What they want to do with the product, what they want to do with the team. Sometimes it's also a question of what do you think your valuation should be based on industry comparables, right? There are enough comparables to look at, either from a funding perspective or from an acquisition perspective. So many more stars have to align for an acquisition to happen, right? Now, culture fit, market or product fit, and then ultimately a economic or evaluation fit, right?
Right.
So if one of these things don't align and you really don't have to sell, then you will not pull the trigger, right?
Yeah.
So unfortunately, we have been in a better side to call those shots because we are growing really healthy. We are excited about the problem statement. We're excited about our customers. The market is growing fast. Our market is growing 40 to 50% year over year, which is like high double digit, right? Not many markets grow more than 10 to 15% year over year.
Right.
But electronic signatures and document workflow automation and digitalization is one of those markets which is even post pandemic. It's the market adoption, customer adoption is going to happen a lot more sooner.
True.
And the market size is going to even expand much bigger than what it was earlier projected to be.
Right.
It's like a $50 to $100 billion TAM, right? So when the market is so big and we are enjoying what we are doing, and we know there is competition getting hard, that means it's a good sign, right? More eyes are coming in from both investors, acquirers, and customers, right? Who knows, right? Now, when the right time comes, we will have to think about this seriously, right? Taking on a bigger funding partner or finding a bigger, like you said, finding a bigger home, right?
Right.
But ultimately, we're excited about the vision that we have, and we feel we can do one of the best jobs solving this problem. And that's what goes on in my mind, when I think about some of these options out there.
So then which means there is a much larger end game that you have. Uh, for the lack of a better term, I'll use the word end game. The first decade is really formative. So what I'm hearing
Yeah.
is the next decade is where the massive use cases are all going to come out, because right now you are an enabler in a particular transaction. You haven't yet set your sights on the transaction itself, because then you take a much larger make a much larger impact on the economic value of the transaction, and then you can start taking different kind of positions on it, right? So then what's the end game then, or what is the next evolution game?
There's no end game in entrepreneurship, right? If you were to sort on the answer here, I think it's the journey. You will only know the end game when it arrives. You can't know it
Or
beforehand.
rather the long
The
shot,
market,
let's say.
yeah, okay, yeah. So the long shot would be, um, today the market is penetrated in terms of the target customer segment, right? Is like maybe 6 to 7% at the most, right? So when the market penetration, despite having one or two public companies in this space and a few other good players in the market, um, it's there could be multiple winners. Right? It's a B2B SaaS. It's not a consumer, social networking fintech space where one brand kind of one or two brands take monopoly or duopoly, right?
Right.
There are different segments from a size of the company. There are different segments from industry. There are horizontal solutions and vertical solutions for certain department use cases. But our long shot here is to be that horizontal platform, both as a SaaS solution and also as a developer platform, to give that ability to customize e-signatures and document workflows, which are fully digital or fully automated, into third-party, SaaS solutions or third-party business workflows, to make other companies or to make other end customers more efficient, right? Save time and money, be more compliant, have delightful customer experience, and also the ability to, I would say, close contracts or ability to have turnaround times much shorter, right, to electronic signatures. So that's our API story. But even if you think about API story or SaaS story, become that horizontal platform where we could fulfill 80% of features or capabilities that a customer from any segment, small, medium to mid market, or even enterprise in the future, right? We will go into enterprise in the longer term. Right now, SMB is our focus, because we believe, with a product and a self-serve distribution channel, we can use resources efficiently without building a large sales team or a large outbound team at this point. So having that horizontal platform that fulfills the needs of 80% of our customers, and the other 20% we could have them build it through our developer platform, right? So that way we are not, we don't have to think about HR only solution, or we don't have to think about sales only solution. We are anybody wants to sign any sort of a document, any sort of a format, any sort of a device, we will be there for you with our best-in-class cross-platform solution. So I hope that's what our long shot would be, right? And there's a long way to go from where we are today. And we hope we can find the right set of partners, employees, and investors at some time, right, to be a partner in the journey.
Right. So let's talk some personal stuff. Where does Mexico City feature in all of this?
Oh yeah. So I think this answer is much easier to say now, right? See, after I built the company for from 2011 2016 or 17 in India, as a founder, as a CEO, I needed to be close to my to customers and partners, right? And partners are like Apple, Google, or a potential investor, or another integration, a strategic integration that we want to do with, right? So these are the sort of customers and partners, and it was becoming more difficult, staying at the ground level versus staying more on the outside, right? So I needed to shift my time zone, and shifting my time zone meant I had to move to US, right? So that was the original reason why I moved back to the North American time zone. And we decided to make Dallas the headquarters. Originally, the company was headquartered in California, but you know, um, for for more affordability as a bootstrap company, reduce the cost of living and also hire people with who could be more loyal to the company. And in the Bay Area, it's very hard to hire and it's very hard to retain, right? As a bootstrap company. So, and Dallas was something that I knew based on certain recommendations will be a good place to base myself. So we moved to Dallas actually, stayed there for some time, and but then I realized, while Dallas can be a headquarters for us, but I don't need to be physically in that place. And we had some family in Mexico City because my wife is from Mexico originally. So we thought, why don't we solve two problems with one stone, right? Be in the time zone and be close to family. And family is also equally important. Startups can be very grueling, right? Can be very grueling. It's a long-term journey. So you need other other factors to bring
So
some
how did you meet your wife?
sanity to your life.
Where and how did you meet your wife?
I met her in San Francisco. When I was
Oh,
before I moved to India.
I
I
see.
was I was in San Francisco. So it was a introduction through a common friend, and
Okay.
it went on. We were friends. Then we started dating, and then by the time we decided to move to India, we decided to also get married. Yeah.
How
Yeah.
did she live here for some time? Then while you were building
Yeah,
it?
we she lived and she was one of the founding employees of the company too. Right now, we
Ah,
both moved to India. We both, I was doing this, so she was excited about the idea, and she was excited about customers and community, and she had some marketing background too. So she was with the company for the first 6 years
okay. Okay.
until she found more things, more calling for other things. Yeah.
Awesome. Great conversation, Sunil. In closing, what would be your advice to early stage founders and maybe founders in SaaS?
Yeah. So if we specifically talk about SaaS, I think we are in the golden age of B2B SaaS for sure, right? And
Maybe in the early stages
uh,
of it, in some sense, not even in the middle of it, in the
yeah,
early stage, I
sure.
suppose.
Yeah.
Right?
Um, mm, and I think if you are convinced about a problem statement, just because of your passion or you have some sort of a gut sense, right? Just take a long-term view of it and know that the market is infinite, right? Uh, when you get your feet or when you get your hands dirty in a problem statement, you may not know all the answers, to the problem or what customers need. But the more and more you invest your time and attention, and and build a team that could be equally passionate, because it takes a team to go far, right? You can go fast with a small team, but it needs a large team to go far, to go further. So just take a long-term view. Market is infinite. There is, there is a bit of opportunity for everybody as long as you build a great product and you have a team that is committed to solve problems for the sake of customers. Just enjoy the journey, right? And the world will put all the pieces of the puzzle, right? Along the way, and uh, you define your own success, right? You may not become a massive success, but you will have massive learning and the learning will lead towards other success in future for you. So that's kind of will be my short advice for founders now.
Awesome. So, Sunil, this has been a great conversation. You put in a lot of depth into your responses. There's a lot of things for those that know what they're looking for. Your passing mention of a lot of things will enrich them. And I know this is just the beginning for SignEasy. There's a bigger decade ahead. I can see it in the way you're shaping it, and we are going to see it become much bigger. And I also see the passion that you want to keep it alive, and you see this getting bigger, which is why you're doing what you're doing and the way you're doing it. And when you scale the next peak, Maharajas of Scale will come back and then have another conversation to see what that vantage point looks like. But it was fabulous having you on the show.
Well, thank you, Krishna. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope we get to speak again in the next growth phase of the company. Maybe at another big milestone in future. But happy to share my learnings, and hopefully this is an inspiration for some of the listeners who are
absolutely
about to start their journey or who are in the middle of their startup journey.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you again. Yeah.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this story. If this story made a difference to you, tell us by leaving a comment on the website or our social media channels. Help us spread the love by subscribing, liking, and sharing our show. We welcome speaker suggestions and collaboration. Write to me at Tanya@maharajasofscale.com.